For this tutorial, I'm responding to a request about something that I had put up. It's in a demo reel somewhere, and basically it's a matte painting tutorial. So as you saw before, there's some animation and effects and a little bit of After Effects stuff going on, but really the majority of this is a matte painting. So it's sort of a two-part. One is to take a photograph and turn it into a snowy scene, and the other is to turn it into a nighttime. So basically a day for night shot. This was from some commercial work that I did, and I was given this photo right here. So pretty decent quality photo. I'm using it here at 1920 by 1080 for the final result, and had several things that I had to do with this. The end result was the animation that you saw. And so I'll step you through how I did this in Photoshop. So a couple things. In addition to making it a nighttime winter scene, I had to add a few elements. So I'm going to turn on this layer right here, and from this plant I was given, apparently they needed some extra wording right here. So I'm going to zoom in here a bit, and we'll take a look at this. Needed to say North Processing. Okay. So I've got a text layer, and as you can see, I've turned it into a smart object. So if I double click on that, and there's the text layer. So you can't really do a whole lot of transformation on just a text layer, but if you convert it to a smart object, then you've got the full range that you can do. So if I do a transform on this, you can see how I've transformed it to kind of fit into position with the perspective of the photo. Now to really get that, I actually created some not some vanishing points, but some lines going to a vanishing point, based on what the verticals of the photo are. So you can kind of see where these verticals are, and I have another tutorial on using the line tool in Photoshop to find your horizon and your vanishing point and do things like this. So you can always refer to that and see it. But you can see with these here, and the lines I'm trying to match are pretty evident. So as I transform that, you can see how I've made it fit in there. Alright, so a couple things else on this layer here. Looks like there's a little bit going on. I've actually taken and done a blend if gray. Now I'm not sure if you've ever seen this before, but what this means, this blend if is sort of Adobe speak for make transparent if. So what I'm saying is this current layer, I want to make that transparent over the darker parts of the layer underneath. So there are some dark pieces right there, and I figured this paint on the wall wouldn't be covering those little vents or whatever they are. So for example, if I take this and I move this back, it kind of covers those up. So you can see that as I take and I pull this slider here, it's going to start dropping away from where that dark stuff is. And I can see it kind of dropping away there. As I pull it here, whoop, there we go. See, I went too far. So you can see how it kind of starts dropping away as I pull this slider. So what that means really is that any value that is, and this is just a grayscale value of 0 over here to 255 right here. So any value that's 0 to 105, see that, is not going to appear. It's going to make this layer transparent based on the pixel value of the underlying layer. Now if you look closely, what you might see is that the transparency is not very nice. It's either 0 or 100%. So what you can do here, and this is probably one of the least documented obscure features in Photoshop, if you hold down Alt or Option, you can split this slider, and then the more you pull that across, the more sort of anti-aliasing and levels of transparency you get here. So I did that, just drop it away from the darker parts. Something else I might want to show you is that the blending mode is multiply. If I did that to normal, you have this, which obviously just does not work at all. with this shadow side of the building. Now what this red color is, it may have been the client's logo color. So especially if we're going over white, taking a color and putting it to multiply works quite well, and also some of the darker things will show through. And also you can see I've got a little bit of a mask there where I've painted out just a few things, and then some stuff here. I think this may have to do with the icicles later on. But anyway, there you have it. So I'm adding some words. We'll just turn this layer off here. And the big thing is the snow, right? So we've got the snow. How are we going to do that? Well, I've got a snow layer right here. But, what am I going to do? Am I going to hand paint all that? Well, for something like this, what I'm looking for is I want to have Photoshop help me out and do as much of the work as it can, and then that leaves less for me to do. So you can kind of try and hand paint, do everything by hand, or if you know Photoshop's tools, it'll do some of that work for you. So what I'm going to try and see is, for the snowy stuff, can I find a way to do some selection that will give me, say, the tops of things, because the snow is going to hit on the top, and then not really hit on the sides of things. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, especially as it deals with things like these trees and the ground and stuff like that. So what I'm going to end up with is I want a fairly complex selection. Whenever I'm thinking a complex selection, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my channels and look at my channels here. So if I click on red, there we go, red or green or blue, I can see the different color information in the channels. So as I'm looking at this, it looks to me like I end up using the green copy, and I got something like that. Well, what does that mean? How did I get there? Well, I'll show you. So basically I'm looking for contrast. As I'm trying to say, where am I getting stuff where, the stuff where I want to put the snow is the brightest, and the stuff where I don't want snow to go, say, telephone poles or the sides of things, is the darkest. I chose this green channel right here. So I'll show you what I did to get to right here. So you grab the green channel and you want to duplicate it. There are various ways to do that. I like to just take the channel and drag it down to the new channel button, and there it is. There's a copy. By the way, just so you know, any additional channel you have besides the color channels is an alpha channel. So these alpha ones right here. And also, if you're clicking on a mask, that'll show up. So if I go back here to my layers, let's just go off this layer right there and go back, that mask channel's gone. So here's my green copy from my green channel. You never want to mess these up. And I'm going to do a Command L or Control L on PC to do levels. So just really quickly, what I'm looking for is to increase the contrast. So I'm going to use a channel to make a selection. So just so you know, channels, selections, and alpha channels, or mask selections and alpha channels, they're all the same thing. If you were to save a selection, it actually saves as an alpha channel. So you can create a very complex selection here with your channels. So if I just grab this white slider and I pull that up, look how I'm kind of pulling things out there, and I'm really getting rid of all this detail, and it's kind of pulling that out. If I pull the black one up, I'm darkening some of that. But I want to kind of see if I can get these tops of these trees to be kind of white, because the snow would be on the trees, but then there'd be a lot of detail showing through where it's not on them. But obviously the more the trees go to the top, I want it to be kind of wider, and not wider for snow's sake, but wider to make a selection. So if I grab my white eyedropper here and I click there on those, there we go. So now I'm getting something that looks pretty good, right? So imagine here, the way this works is that 100% white, or 25 or 255, 255, 255 is going to be 100% selected. Black, or 000, is going to be 0% selected. Any kind of grays in between are going to be selected based on that value. So this is how you can make a very, very complex selection. So imagine this, it's kind of fortunate it happens to be white. So imagine this as snow, and where's the snow going to go versus where is it not going to go. So I could kind of look at this and sort of see, yeah, that should work. And you can just kind of fine tune this and see where it goes here. Okay, so once you've done that and you say okay, then you're left with your channel. So this, for example, is, I don't need this, so I can get rid of that, but this was the copy that I made, something like that. So I guess I did a little bit darker stuff in here, so there would be kind of, less selection happening right here. Okay, so once you've done that, you want to turn this additional alpha channel into a selection based on the values I mentioned, white to black. So how's that going to work? Well, an easy way is if you just hold Command or Control on the PC, you can see there's a little marquee by your cursor, and you click, and now it's loaded all these values as a selection. So again, remember, white's 100% selected, black is 0% selected, and the grays are sort of a range in between. Or if you don't want to do that, or if you forget that keyboard shortcut, there's actually a button right down here, and that's Load Channel as a selection. So you can see the purpose of alpha channels really is to create a selection. So what I would do then is I'm just going to click there to load that as a selection, and then come back to my image, RGB, and go to layers, and then on a new layer, just fill on that layer. So that's what I ended up with. In fact, let me show you what I have. So once I make a fill, I can deselect. This is actually what I have. So you can see this is the fill based on that selection. So I can turn off, make some transparency there. You can see where it got fully selected and where it kind of fades away where it wasn't quite white. So this is going to be the beginning of my snow layer. Now, an important part that we see right here is that it's not white. Now, something that everyone should really know is that snow really isn't white. Sorry to tell you, I know it's a shocker. It's actually kind of blue. And so you can see that I've actually labeled this layer snow 5455. Well, what does that mean? Well, often when I'm starting a digital painting, I'm going to pull colors from a recognized universal library. If I go to my color picker, I'm going to go right here to color libraries. That's going to be Pantone Solid Coded. And that's great because this is a universally agreed upon library of colors, particularly for printing and design and all that, but it works well for these purposes as well. So just to kind of show you here, I'm going to type in 5445. That's the color I chose. So it's like just a very, very light, very subtle kind of bluish gray. Trust me, it's going to work much better for snow than pure white, especially because this needs to turn to a nighttime scene anyway. So just so you know, that's the color I chose for snow when I filled this layer. So I filled this layer, and you can see that snow goes everywhere that the selection was, but it's in places where I don't want it. But this kind of gets me maybe, I don't know, 50%, 60% there. The rest of it I have to kind of do myself. And I did that with a mask. So let me just turn this mask back on. So I hand painted on the mask to remove the snow from places I didn't want it to be. So obviously, for example, things that are more vertical, I'm going to pull the snow out of. So right here, for example, along this sort of this gravel hill or ridge, I don't want the snow there to be as dense as it is on the flat ground, so I'm painting that out with a mask. And also, just so you could see some roof detail, and especially the logo of the company, I wanted to paint off some of that snow there as well. And I'm just kind of looking at places that I don't want the snow to be. So to show you what my mask is, I'm going to Alt or Option click on the mask, and that's what it is. So, I mean, yeah, that's a lot of painting, right? And then I'm using a little bit of a gradient to fade away at the top. But that's a lot of painting. So what I'd be doing here is I'd be zooming in and using a black brush and just making sure that I'm painting along here to cover up the parts where I don't want the snow to be. So it just kind of masks off these areas. So you can see I've pulled some snow off the roads. I'm making sure it's on the top of these stacked up items wherever they are, but not on the sides. I'm painting to get it off the sides here, and just kind of a little bit so that it's not completely thick and dense all over everywhere. But snow doesn't hit every surface with the same type of thickness and coverage. It's going to be sticking to some things more than others, and it'll be driven on and scattered about. So I'm kind of just doing a little bit of painting there to get rid of stuff here. And of course, on the sides of everything, if there's any of the buildings that were light enough to where there was snow on the sides, then I'm kind of painting that out there. So that kind of gets me to say something like this. So for example, zoomed in close, you can see what that snow layer does. If I turn off the mask, you can see kind of how it covers everywhere. Well, obviously I want it, as an example, I want it to be here on these roofs, but not on the sides of the buildings. So as I paint black on that mask, that's kind of what I get to. And something else, so if you look at this layer, I put it on screen at 90%. Well, let's look at normal at 100%. So there it is, normal at 100%. And in this case, the snow is actually darker than some of these brighter areas here, which it wouldn't be. So screen is a good way to change that. Now screen's usually for highlights, but in this case it works well for the snow. So the snow is going to be pretty bright, but the fact that I use that not white color, but that kind of light grayish blue, the PMS 455, means it gives it some nice little bit of color to it, so it's not going to be pure white. And then just so that I could see a little bit more of the photo underneath it, I took the opacity down to 90%. So anyway, that's the snow layer. I mean, that's probably the majority of the work there, is to get all this stuff happening. Now the nice thing is, look how it kind of makes the trees look like they're snow covered, but yet there's still some real color peeking out underneath. And that's without me having to hand paint all this. So using the channel to make a very complex selection is really going to help out there. And you can see that in that part of the image, I didn't really do a whole lot of painting on the mask. A little bit to kind of darken in where these shadows were. I figured there wouldn't be a whole lot of snow underneath the trees, and just a bit here and there, but nothing out here. I'm letting that complex selection I made do its job. And you can see right here, I painted some of that water tower back in because obviously that may have been too covered, and I wanted to have, you can have snow on the top, but we can't have it on the sides. Okay, so now we have the snow on there, and then I've got this layer called brighter snow, and we'll just turn that layer on, and that's where I'm just kind of painting, I think, on top, just kind of grabbing a bit. Let me just turn this off there. That's where I'm kind of painting, just kind of on the tops there to get some denser, thicker areas. And this may have been something where, because of the original selection on the snow layer, it wasn't quite enough. So I'm doing one layer on top where I can just paint some denser snow right on top of everything. And again, there's that with the rest of the snow, and then the photo underneath. So overall, it's starting to look pretty snowy, and it's doing okay. Something that you also might notice, if I come over here, is that you see there are shadows here. Just because of the way the sun's hitting. This is a warm, sunny day. The sun's hitting this roof, and it's casting a shadow, and there's that shadow along there. If I turn off my snow layer, you can definitely see that. See the shadow on the ground and the shadow there? Well, that kind of came through a bit with my snow selection layer, but I thought if this is going to be a nighttime scene, there's not going to be any real cast shadow like that. And so this brighter snow layer, you can see how I'm covering up any big, strong cast shadows. So that's going to make my lighting a bit more diffuse. I want to get rid of those cast shadows there. Okay, so let's move on to adjustments. I've got one layer group here with my adjustments. And there you go, boom, it's nighttime. How about that? Well, let's kind of take a look and see what we have here. So the first one is curves. So I did a curves layer, and this curves layer is kind of darkening things and making them bluer. So we're going for nighttime, so you do need to do blue stuff. But unlike what you see in a lot of things where the movies have been color corrected to do a day for night shot, nighttime really isn't blue. As you get darker and darker and there's no natural light, what happens is things actually get desaturated. So it is going a bit blue. If you look at my curves levels here, my RGB for overall value is I'm darkening, see all this right here? There's no pure white. I've pulled that pure white down in the curves, and I'm darkening all these highlight to mid values. But I'm leaving the darkest values. I'm not darkening those anymore. So that's going to reduce contrast a bit, which is kind of what you want for a nighttime scene. Also, with red, I kind of dropped the red a little bit, so that's going to darken it and, of course, reduce red. With the green, Same type of thing. I drop the green, and that will reduce the green and also make it darker. And then with my blue, I raise the blue a bit. And because I'm going above the line here, that's going to tend to brighten things. But with the other channels going down, with the red and the green, that's going to kind of keep that blue from getting too bright. So you can see overall, that's what's happening. Pumping up the blue a little bit, red and green down a tiny bit, and then overall just value right there. So that's what that adjustment layer is doing. The next one is I'm doing a levels, and this levels. I wouldn't usually do curves and levels. You can see with just this one right here, just to make sure that there's no kind of bright left anywhere, I just took this white slider and took it all the way from 255 down to 182. What that says is there's going to be nothing at all in this image brighter than that level of grayscale right there. So if I turn off this one, you can see how it's just an overall kind of dulling of everything. And I guess if I'd been a little more tricky, I could have done it more with here, but I got a good selection of values and colors with this one. So the levels, I'm just doing an overall dropping and making sure that nothing in the light area goes past this right there. So that's what my levels is doing. And then I've got another levels. Wow, this is crazy. Another levels here. Let's zoom out and see what's happening. And this one is sort of it's actually adjusting these the midtones. Actually taking the midtones and making them a bit darker. And you can see that I've got a mask here on this adjustment layer. What that mask is doing is I'm kind of darkening the background, and then with the gradient on the mask, I'm making it so that I'm keeping it a bit lighter here. And the whole point is, the name of the company is sort of the focus. So I want to have it, be a bit lighter here, and it can get darker as it goes away from the viewer. And that's just kind of part of an aesthetic choice as well, because I want to keep some brightness here so that we can see the important parts, and we can not knock down the background and make it not as bright so it's less important. Just an aesthetic choice. Also notice here that on my mask, with the gradient on it, I've actually taken down the density. And I loved it when Photoshop added this feature to be able to adjust a mask. Really, really cool. And of course, if it goes up all the way, then you can see that that's a pure black gradient there. But I figured that was a bit too much, so I took the density down to where it looks good. So I'm just trying to very, very, very subtly darken the background a bit and not the foreground as much. And then my last adjustment layer is a hue saturation. What's happening here? So basically I'm just taking the saturation and I'm taking it down. I'm actually colorizing. So we turn this off, and here's where I'm kind of taking, you see how, right here that green grass is kind of showing through and there's some different color. I'm doing a colorize on this. So what I'm doing is taking the saturation way down and doing a little bit of kind of going towards blue. So yes, it is kind of blue, but again, notice the blue I'm using to colorize it is really, really desaturated. It's way down here. So I am going a bit blue. And the thing is, snow is very blue as you get darker. So as I said, snow isn't white, it's really blue. You'll see that in the shadows of snow. Especially if you have strong lights, you'll see the shadows are blue. But a nighttime thing, the snow is going to appear more blue. So if I were doing something that weren't snowy, I probably wouldn't have this as blue. Maybe desaturate it more so it's kind of more grayscale. But you can see that I'm doing a hint of blue and a good bit of desaturation just to darken the whole thing down. Also notice things like, for example, the logo of the company and its words here, which are red, are now getting very, very dull and desaturated, as you might expect at night. So I've got this kind of stuff happening. You see also with both of these adjustment layers, I have masks and with a bit of gradient, and I've taken that gradient down again with the density. And you can just kind of drop that down to where it works. I do that a lot with a gradient on an adjustment layer, and I find that often that a density at 50% looks pretty good. I try and keep whole numbers 50, 60, but anyway, that worked for me. So just to kind of keep things organized, you can see that I'm I'm putting all these adjustment layers in a group, a layer group there. And oh, we want that. There we go. Let's close this up. And I put a mask on this layer group. Really nice. You can put a whole bunch of things in a group. And of course, these two layers have their own masks. And then I can put a mask that affects the entire group. So check that out. Here's what I did. So I'm doing some stuff like this where I'm kind of masking off the effects of all this darkening and desaturating here. Why am I doing that? Well, that's going to be apparent later, but of course it's for the color. But the big thing is here. Just to have the background be a bit more interest, I'm taking out some of the dark areas on the snowy ground to act like they are lights. So you can see we have kind of lights showing right there. You know, if I hide this mask, it might become a little bit apparent, you know, why that is. So this is kind of looking pretty good, but it's like it's, you know, dead and everything's gone, nothing's on, there's no life here. So I've got just on this layer lights. I've just painted little lights. And you see even in the background, just tiny little lights there just to give it a little hint of stuff going on. The lights, of course, are fairly warm compared to the snow, and so they're going to pop out and just give it a bit of interest and life. So I turn those off. See how it just doesn't look that interesting. Turn the lights on. Now you have fun little points of interest to look at. So with these lights here, you can see that the lights say 1205. Well, that's a PMS color. And so you do 1205, just a really, really bright yellow. And that's going to work well for those lights. So these lights right here, just zoom in, you can see. So you just with a very small brush, I'm just painting the light. There's not much to it, but I've got a little bit of an outer glow. So this outer glow actually adds just a tiny bit of stuff going there to make it look luminous. So I'm trying to imagine what it would be like inside the factory with this big door open, and it's kind of just suggesting some detail and have some light on the floor. And you can see this outer glow here. I'm using same color, 1205. And for the glow, it's pretty small, just a 2-pixel glow. And I'm using color dodge. Now the default is screen, but you can see that with screen, it kind of goes all over everywhere. And I like to use color dodge for luminosity. One thing about that is that color dodge gives you some nice color going on, but also it doesn't quite appear over darker areas. So if I say look at screen here, notice how it just kind of covers everything. With color dodge, I get a little more detail showing through. So it's kind of, I like to use little layer styles like this, and they're kind of fun. And so I think with this, what you can see is that now if I turn on the mask for this adjustments group, you can see that's why I put that on there. And then I have cast light where I painted there, and that's just to have the light with a bit of kind of golden glow being painted out in the snow. So again, just painting this by hand with little brushes, trying to imagine if there's a window here, where would that hit, you know, on the snow. Obviously, if something's connected, it's going to be open like that. If it's not connected, it's kind of up there. It'll kind of be a little bit away from it. And so I'm just trying to paint little things here to make them look kind of fun. And you see, if I didn't have this adjustment layer or adjustment group with its mask, you can see how, you know, I'm trying to paint this color here on top of dark snow. So this mask in the same area helps that kind of work. So my cast light, you can see I'm doing color at 30%. And so that's just to take this, you know, kind of light color I have already and just kind of tint it a little bit. So again, color, and there's the opacity. I probably would have, you know, just experimented with this just to kind of see what, you know, what looks good. And remember that, you know, your cast light or your reflections of stuff, they're never going to be as intense, as strong as the light source itself. So my strongest source of light, that's kind of the brightest or most saturated color, is the inside the buildings, and the light they're casting on the snow is going to be a bit less, and of course fade away. So that overall I think is looking pretty good, right? I mean, it kind of looks like a nighttime snowy scene, and you know, the lights really make it pop. They give it some life, and it wouldn't just really be as fun without it. So apart from that, you know, what else am I doing? Well, I was told we wanted to do like a Christmas decoration on this building, as though they actually, you know, strung Christmas lights to be ready for the season on this huge warehouse here, right? So what I'm doing here is I've got a layer with cables. And this is just a little detail. It doesn't really mean much, but I figured, you know, they'd be stringing up lights on cables. So these are the cables for the lights. And I needed to do lights around these letters here, and that's why I have the, you know, this part of the mask, right? So it cuts off the dark and brings up the initial lighter part. And so I kind of figured if you took a cable and you sort of strung it along here, you'd have little cables kind of connecting, you know, one letter to another. Here's one where I have the cable kind of just going across here and draping through there and it's going over here. Here's one where I figured if the cable went around here, it wouldn't exactly perfectly match it, so I have it kind of going off like that. And just, you know, trying to just figure out where that would be. And then have it kind of going off there and they're tucking it underneath. And of course, all the way along here. Now this actually is a vector shape. And it's actually just using the line tool in Photoshop. I'm just making like little lines there, and that's what those are. Using the line tool with the smallest size, you know, 1 pixel line, just making little lines there. So anyway, that's what those cables are. And then we have one of these edge lights. And so now we have some kind of fun stuff here, trying to have Christmas lights look luminous. And what's going to make these look luminous is to have, of course, the brighter value in color here, but also more saturated. Compare it here with my background snow, which is darker and desaturated. What's going to make light really work is a feeling of saturation versus desaturation. And so these edge lights are just like a tiny little point of light, tiny little brush. I probably took a brush and then just a small brush and took out the spacing and then just did click, shift click, shift click, shift click to get a long line of these little lights. And this is probably white. You can see the effects here, and this is an outer glow. And once again, outer glow, color dodge. That color dodge, you know, changing it from screen. So there's screen. It's bright, but doesn't really look, you know, that luminous and alive. If you take it and go to color dodge, look at how it just pops in really bright things here. It looks like it's actually lit. And then I had some masking stuff here, like, you know, for example, I masked off the edge of this building here so they could kind of, you know, it's kind of like they're along the bottom. So there they are. I guess they put it around like this for some strange reason. They put it across here and then down the wall and down here. And so, of course, I want to kind of mask off the edge of this building right there. So you just see a little bit of glow, but, you know, the lights where they were. And then icicles. There are the icicles hanging down, looking pretty cool. There's a really great way to make icicles using the wind filter and alpha channels. It's such an awesome thing, and it makes such realistic, cool-looking icicles. And I have even a little bit of bevel and emboss and kind of like a little drop shadow. And look how that just adds a lot of light to them. I wish I could say that I came up and thought of this, but I'm just not that smart. If you want to look at, you know, making icicles, you can, I'm sure, find tutorials about Photoshop icicles against using the wind filter and alpha channels. And you can use that same technique to make things like fire and drips and streaks and other things. So there are my icicles. And icicles, of course, I thought, you know, would be a nice thing to have. And then here are, these are actually some little vector shapes, just like little circles. Circle, 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 just to kind of put along the lights. And there's a lot of that going on there. And the same type of thing, there's that, you know, outer glow, just like the others. And then for the this edge here, I've got some red lights. All right, and the same thing, those are actually little vector circles, a whole bunch all along there. And then they have quite a few effects here. There's a little inner glow, and you can see that to kind of give a little red on the inside. And of course an outer glow of red and a little drop shadow. Here's the funny thing about the drop shadow. As I tell people, glows don't have to be bright and shadows don't have to be dark. Just change the blending mode. So by default, this is going to be multiply, it's going to be dark. But what I was trying to suggest here is that these were not just glowing, but kind of casting a light and reflecting that little light down on the wall. So So if I turn off this drop shadow, you can see how it kind of goes away, but it's actually just like a little bit right there, like the glow from the light is sort of hitting the wall there. And I decided to use the drop shadow layer style. So, we got that, and then I duplicated that just to make those look even brighter. So that's pretty cool. And then we have, of course, the lights that go around the word American. And so what I'm hoping here with this is that it kind of looks like these are, big bulbs on, this cable that I've drawn the cable underneath. And sort of the same type of thing, that same outer glow, which is a light yellow, probably 1205, set to color dodge. And the cool thing is, as things combine, look what the color dodge does there. It looks so bright and luminous. I mean, that is just really, really cool. And so as this combines with other colors, and especially lighter colors underneath, you really get that effect that they look like they're real lights and glowing. And color dodge is good for that. So keep that in mind. Color dodge is great for luminosity. And just to show you, if I take off this mask from my adjustment layer that darkened everything, you can see how it just doesn't really work that well, right? Because I'm trying to put all these glows here on a dark surface. Well, if they're actually glows, they should be lighting up, and snow is really reflective. And so as I mask out some of my dark adjustments, I'm getting really cool stuff like that. And you can see these nice little spots of color. So this saturation of color, see how it's a nice, pretty saturated red there versus a very dark and unsaturated red? That's what's going to make this look luminous versus the things that are not. So anyway, that's all, looking good. I'll close these up and say I just like to keep things nice and tidy. And then we have the trees. I was supposed to have like these, you've seen these on buildings around Christmas time before, where they just put up a big pole and then just do a bunch of lights down to make kind of a Christmas tree sort of thing. So the same type of thing here. I mean, there's really nothing to this. The main thing, of course, is you want to keep and make sure that your perspective is correct, right? So here are my perspective lines, and these are really going to be angled up because of this high perspective looking down. So the vertical lines of these trees, those have got to match the actual vertical perspective of the photo. And that's why I have these guide layers here with these vector shapes kind of do that for me. So I mean, the trees are, there's a decent amount of stuff on them. I've got kind of a light at the bottom, and you can see that I'm making a little glow, like it's a green glow on the top of the roof. And then I've got there's another glow over there. And then I've got the lights on the back, and then I've got the lights on the front, and then up there are the poles in between the front and the back lights, and the little cables that go right there to kind of show you like the lights are strung up on cables. And that's sort of the idea. Then like this a little tiny little circle there, and that's got some outer glow and drop shadow. And again, the drop shadow is going to be changed from multiply to a brightening blend mode to mix with this outer glow. And of course the outer glow, yep, there it is, color dodge. I'm putting in a lot of color there, so it gets a really nice golden glow. Look at that intense golden color, and just how bright and luminous it looks. If I were to put that to say screen, it just doesn't work. But notice how if you do color dodge, the color and the intensity really attaches to like the brighter parts, and then it fades away quickly on the darker parts. It looks really, really nice and luminous. So again, color dodge. Okay, so we're really getting there for the background image. The last thing really would be I put like a little burst. I actually looked around and thought, there aren't any really good like brushes for little lens flares and stuff in Photoshop. So I did a search around for Photoshop brushes with little lens flares and got some stuff like that, just to kind of add a little excitement there. And then the last thing, of course, would be the sky. That's okay, but I'd like to have a little bit of color in the sky. So here's my sky, and what I've got is everything's here in a folder, and you can see that I've got a mask And this was actually probably made from one of the channels, so I could get a mask of just the sky area. So what I have here is I have a dark blue, right? So I got my dark blue there, and that's going to be my basis for my sky. And then I've got a little bit of a light blue gradient on top. So even at night, look around and see, especially because of artificial light, you'll see that toward the horizon, the night sky gets lighter as the denser atmosphere catches more light in the air. So it's this little gradient right there. It's giving a little more light near the horizon. And then a little bit of orange here. And notice that's set to color dodge, my favorites there, just to kind of show you, like, well, it's like, you know, the sun hasn't quite gone down. Maybe it's way off here to the left, but there's just a little bit of tiny bit of sunset light just past there, and that'll just give you a little more of that edge of those hills in the background. And of course, there's a bit of a gradient on that layer, so that this, you know, orangey bit just sort of fades away and doesn't show up over here. And then I actually have a photo here of just some cloudy sky, and I've set this to luminosity, so that I'm just getting like some hints of clouds and stuff going on there. If I put this, say, up to normal at 100%, so there are the clouds there, and it's covering up all my stuff. So I thought I just want to do, you know, luminosity. So now I'm keeping the color, but it's kind of getting this darkened light of a little bit of clouds going in the sky. And I'm supposed to make it snow in After Effects, so it needs to be kind of looking a little bit overcast and cloudy anyway. And then I just take down that opacity until it just sort of looks right. You know, you just kind of play around. I think 50%, I said that's good. And then I just did something with a little star, and this is the same little brush right there. And then just did some kind of things where I can, you know, I do like a little bit of glows on it to make it look kind of just this nice little Christmas star in the sky. You know, something like that. But again, that's the end result. That's how you get from point A to point B. This is a snow matte painting day for night scene, with the additional challenge of having to add some elements on the building and Christmas lights and decorations. But that's how it comes together. I hope that has made sense and inspires you to do something like this in the future. But, you know, it's not too hard. If you know the elements that you need to use, follow the steps that I've shown, you can do something like this. Just start from a good photo and have fun.